by the way, I think this whole notion of the customer journey as a product is a seminal notion. I think as you internalize that and think about releasing and think about the discipline of product management applied to customer journey, I think there's a ton of implications in that that are going to be really, really powerful. I also was kind of feeling like, I'm speaking to the choir. This is the preacher speaking to the choir. People in this room are bought into the idea that the customer success investment is the right investment to make. But we can't stay at Carmel Valley Ranch forever. I'm sorry. I wanted to break it to you early in the day. So we got to go back, and we have to enlist the organization in this journey and enlist in investing in the journey. Not just money, but investing change management, investing career personal capital in saying we are going to re-architect and rethink the way we present ourselves to the world, the way we engage with the world with a customer success mindset. And so the three slides I want to share with you, I hope will be useful to you in having that, taking that dialogue back to your enterprise to secure a stronger understanding of why customer success management and why now. So the first slide I want to share with you, I realized, by the way, I joined tech in 1978. This is 2022. This is like exactly halfway in each century, and I think each century was characterized by a model for me. So the 20th century, the first 22 years of my time in tech, I think this was the prevailing model. This is how tech changed the world. So it was a world in which demand was in search of supply, meaning we were looking for cheaper, better, faster things. We were looking for a more affordable economy and a more widespread market footprint, what we ended up calling globalization. And in that model, product was the scarce ingredient, particularly in the tech sector, meaning people would actually wait in line to get the product. And when they got the product and it didn't work very well, they'd still try to make it work anyway, okay? And in fact, lock-in was a huge, huge theme of the 20th century, and it became a very dark theme by the end of that century. But it was a reality. I mean, the product was king, and that was sort of the way it worked. And by the way, the products were amazing because of Moore's law. I mean, Moore's law kept on giving you more compute power for free, like just more than you could actually consume. And so there was this huge amount of innovation that came out of that. The business model was, we'll make it, you buy it, you own it, okay? That's not a customer success model. That is a product success model, right? Once you've bought the product, I win, right? In fact, the idea, close the sale and then do not come back, okay? Just keep moving, close the next sale, right? Oracle, I think, was particularly good at that myself, but I don't want to pick. Sun was good at it, and they were Microsoft, Intel. During the 90s, there was an enormous amount of drive-by selling. But the focus was on producing the product. So then we focused on the supply chain. And this was really interesting. So we started, it was actually with the open source. By the way, the first generation of tech was all vertically integrated. You bought something from digital, it was digital from top to bottom. IBM, top to bottom. Apollo, top to bottom. Sun was the first, and then the PC ecosystem was the big change there, where we went to a supply chain model. And then we started taking the supply chain, and what the internet changed, so therefore ERP, by the way, became a huge thing, because now you had to manage your thing all the way through a supply chain to get to the end result. And in that world, the internet was the game changer, because the internet brought the China into the manufacturing economy, it brought India into the service economy. It just changed the world. It made it actually a little bit challenging for people in the developed economies, but it was a total godsend to the developing economies, and by and large, an amazing accomplishment for tech to do. Globalization of the supply chain was the play, and it got better and better and better. And in fact, it became so good that we started taking it for granted, and now it's 2022, and we're looking going, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we went a little too far in that direction. And I think what you're going to see in this decade is a kind of a rebalancing, not a repudiation of a global supply chain, but certainly a rebalancing. In that world, by the way, in a product world, you differentiate on features. So the most important person in your company is the engineer. It's the product engineer and the product manager. Product manager was the center of the universe in tech for the 20th century. That was the crucible in which you created general managers, and from general managers you created executives and CEOs. That was the way it worked. Okay? And by the way, even now, you saw Intel just bring back Pat Gelsinger to run Intel as a CEO. He's a product manager. I remember working with him in the 80s when he was in Beaverton. Right? So it's a product management-oriented model. If you're going to optimize, you optimize for lowest price. So in other words, you play a very strong sort of Six Sigma approach to cost management. And in this model, really, at the beginning, it was called tech support. And it was usually in the basement, by the way. And it was not a highly empowered function. And then we raised to customer support. But what it really meant was, if it breaks, call me and we'll see, we'll help you fix it. By the way, these companies wanted to help their customers. They didn't hate their customers. It was just that the entire thing was organized around the product. Okay, fine. So now we fast forward, I'm old. Then this century, okay. And it kind of actually started in 2001. And the reason it started in 2001 was we had spent so much money, at least in the part of the world I deal with, on business software for ERP. And then we had the Y2K bug fear, so everybody bought it one more time, that basically the bottom fell out of the enterprise tech business, because it was like we spent so much money so fast, the rest of the company said, hang on. And every CIO got the message, for this decade, 10% cuts per year, keep going. All right? Let's just bring your budget back in line. So what happened was, now all of a sudden, supply was in search of demand. The global supply chain worked. There was now more product than you had customers to absorb. People were not waiting in line. People were actually defecting, okay, to other companies. In other words, the customer in this century has become the scarce ingredient in the economic model. That's the number one point to land. In the 20th century, the product was the scarce ingredient. The 21st century, the customer is the scarce ingredient. Watching the state of your customers is the thermometer for the health of your business. Whereas in the 20th century, watching the state of your product was the model for your health of your business. So it's a really different model. In that model, the as-a-service business model came into existence because the customer's going, well, I don't want to own your products. I want the monkey on your back, not my back. So I like this as-a-service model because now if it's a service and I'm not getting the outcomes I want, I get to go to you and say, you need to fix this, okay? And therefore, now we get to why this customer experience is now coming to the world, because even if your product is working perfectly, if I'm not getting value out of it, I'm going to churn out. And so now, the customer experience, by the way, it first came in the consumer world. And in the consumer world, they talked a lot about delighting your customers. I think that's a high bar for business customers. Business customers are cranky. They're very self-absorbed, and they're not easily delighted. I think just not pissing off your customer might be a kind of a place to push it. But then if you surprise them, what they would really like to be is surprised with the lack of surprise. Right? Like Amazon, the Amazon shipping experience. It's like, wow, that was easier than I thought, okay? But the customer experience, and so it's very important when you think about customer experience, don't use if you're in a B2B business, don't use the consumer language for customer experience. But do think about the fact that it is an experience, and it's an organizational experience, not just a single end user experience. So it's the economic buyer's experience. Are they getting the ROI? It is the end user experience. Are we getting more productive? It is the technical buyer's experience. Does this integrate with our other infrastructure? I mean, there's a lot of experiences to manage, okay? And then what changed this was cloud and mobile. So now all of a sudden, what used to be something that only major corporations could have, now startups could have, and now tiny home businesses get. Between cloud and mobile computing, we've democratized computing just astoundingly. Astounding. And of course, it's changed our personal lives, it's changed our social lives, it's changed media, it's changed politics, it's changed warfare, it's changed love. I mean, it's changed everything. Okay? The cloud and mobile this is the digital transformation of our culture. It's very similar, actually, to what happened when Gutenberg bought the press in the 16th century, to what happened to the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church and this whole thing. It just totally changed the game. And the priesthood no longer had the power. And there was a little bit of that same democratization with tech. So in this world, now you differentiate on outcomes, not on features. Well, the problem with that is, unless you have some highly sophisticated technology from companies like the Tango, you don't know what the outcomes are. You don't know. And particularly if you work through a distribution chain where you have indirect distribution, now you really don't know, right? And so but if the world is going, if your customer health, if your company health is customer oriented, you gotta work on that. Okay, so optimize for least friction. Again, that is the form of delight we're talking about. And now we're moving to customer success. And I think that logic of how you get from customer support to customer success, I think that's landed. It's certainly landed in the boardrooms. I think it's landed with the executive teams. Where it hasn't really landed is with the middle of the corporation. So if you look at the kind of the middle of the corporation, you know, this is sort of a classic industrial model a value chain that we created during the 20th century. And these are the silos, by the way. And by the way, silos is how you get stuff done, right? So do not demonize a silo. Just leave me alone, and I'll get it done, okay? It's a good thing. But you can see it works from left to right. And basically what we did is we kind of built our technologies out from the left. So the first set of technologies we built were ERP, and that was SAP, and it was Oracle, and PeopleSoft and whatnot. And then we added CRM, and that was Siebel and those folks. And then that eventually got communicated to SaaS and Salesforce. And then more recently we've added CSM. Okay? CSM is still, I think, now in this room, CSM and the customer operating system clearly is designed to go across the whole chain. I don't think that's how your colleagues will see it today. I think they will see it as the right-hand side of this diagram. But by the way, and they'll see it as the latest thing to emerge. But if you think about the power structure of this world, power started on the left and diminished as you went toward the right. Sales and make it and sell it were the two power arrows, and the other two were kind of more supporting. By the time you got to CSM, remember, a lot of people just thought, well, you just took support and turned it into success, right? It's the same people, it's the same function, isn't it? Yeah, sure, okay, got it. Yeah, the pay scale's right here, okay, good, fine. Departmental function, God bless. You know, we're done, okay? So what we want to say is, you know, in this 21st century digital customer-first business model, it's the same chain. It's just that the power is at the other end now. The power is with the customer. And you can't, your entity, your business entity has to work with that power dynamic. It has to get in touch with that power dynamic. When I said you don't know what the outcomes are, that's a firing offense. It's not okay. Boards of directors are not going to say that when the CEO says, well, we don't really know what our customers do with our products, but they keep buying them, the board of directors go, we need a new CEO, okay? So the issue here is we're saying, look, we want to create a motion that starts with the right, and therefore the very first thing you would want to say if you were to design your next customer journey, to putting out the canvas or how you would do that, is we need to interrogate the customer. Did they get value? And by the way, we need to interrogate that customer at 3 different levels. Did the economic buyer who created budget get an ROI that they think is acceptable for continuing it or maybe expanding the investment? Did the end user have a productivity experience that made them more effective and more efficient in their business, and therefore they want to continue to use and proliferate our tool? And did the technical buyer, were they able to administer this program in a way that was consistent with their job description and the success of their infrastructure? Those are 3 interviews. By the way, a CSM doesn't have the right to interview the CEO or the economic buyer. So that means we have to enlist probably a senior sales executive to interview the economic buyer, saying, are you Are you getting the value that you want from our company? I mean, basically, the interview questions are only three. What outcomes were you hoping to get? Second question, what's working? What are we doing well? By the way, spend time with that question. It's really important to spend time with that question, both for their health and your health. And then the third one is, how can we improve? And the key to that dialogue is you must not defend yourself during that dialogue. You must never, ever say, well, but you do try. I mean, you can do it in a humble way, but you must not impede the flow. That allows you then to say, okay, now we go back to the adoption folks and say, okay, now that we know what the value is, now let's go back to our adoption journey. What in our adoption journey is working well, is helping them realize the value, and where in our adoption journey are we actually subtracting value or even prohibiting value being realized? So let's do that. And then we can go back to how do we implement, and then we can go back to how do we sell. So for example, at Salesforce, they are now bringing their CSM team into the pre-sales dialogue for two reasons. One, they're the only people in the room the customer really trusts. And two, they have the real world experience to say, hey, careful, careful. What we know about this particular product or whatever, it can do this, but it probably can't do that. So if you really got to do that, we have to talk about a different solution. So bringing the sell thing, and all the way back to market and design and build. And that notion of getting that signal, that's what I liked about that customer OS thing with the 6 functions arranged instead of having it in a chain to circle around that customer's operating system, is I can get the signal all the way back to the engineering team and the product design team. And if I think about my company is delivering customer journey experiences, the product still does the heavy lifting. At the end of the day, God bless products, okay? They are really, really powerful things, but they need to be oriented correctly to be successful. So that's that second model. It's just ask, but think about this socially, because it depends on how old your company is. But the more your company's been around, the more its executive power structure was built during the blue era. And now all of a sudden you're going to the blue team and saying, well, actually it's an orange world. And actually the power is coming the other way. And what happens is, if you're in a large established company, that's a very, very, very tough change management challenge, which is why if you're in a startup, it's like, score. These guys aren't even moving. I got them. I can nail them because I'm starting on the right and going to the left. And they won't even figure I'm there until I'm halfway there. They won't even sense me until they get to sell and realize they didn't sell something. So it's really important that the core anchor institutions of our industry wise up and wake up. So the last slide I want to share with you is, so the point here, the takeaway, you don't have to reorg. You have to reorient. But that does imply a very different sense of talent arrangement. I mean, the kinds of talent and where you're doing stuff. I was fascinated with, and by the way, DevOps, AI, ML, and customer success was number 4. I think it's really cool. Because by the way, there's a bunch of stuff still happening on the left. God bless. But that customer success is number 4. Okay, last slide. So I'm sort of a big fan of maturity models. Because what I like about maturity models is if you're very conservative and risk averse, you gravitate to the bottom. And if you're highly visionary and risk oriented, you gravitate to the top. And if you're kind of pragmatic, you sort of try to figure out something in the middle. So if you're selling or orienting or communicating with a prospect or with a customer, existing customer, you can use a staircase model or a maturity model to help them self-locate. And then they will tell you how to sell to them. And they will tell you how to serve them without knowing it. Okay? They'll just teach you how they think. So you say, okay, and by the way, there is no stair here. The rule of this model is every stair requires the stairs below it. So you do not abandon a stair. You build atop a stair. But you can't jump stairs. At least that's the claim of the model. You can't jump stairs. By the way, this was created in part for this event. So this is like version 1, iterate, iterate, iterate. So I'm really hoping you guys will say, oh, by the way, Geoffrey, That was wrong. But then we'll do iterate 2, iterate 3, and we'll get there. But I want to give you at least the first pancake. And if you recall, the first pancake, usually not the best pancake, but it's a start. And my job in this industry, I've decided, is to be the first fool. Because who would serve the first pancake? Only a fool. I'm the first fool. Okay, so technical support, this was a core industrial model discipline. Help desk, trouble tickets, case management. And you remember the heavyweight, these very heavyweight, I can't remember, Siebel bought, there were like 3 of these huge heavyweight help desk case management systems. We were going to try to apply knowledge management to them. It was a big lift, and it frankly didn't work very well. But the help desk is important, and trouble decks are important. We still do a ton of stuff with this, and you can do sentiment analysis against your trouble ticket logs, and there's a lot of stuff still to do. It's very product-centric, okay? The next step up is to say, okay, now we're going into the 21st century, and it's like, man, if these people don't use the product, we're dead. By the way, this was a huge wake-up call to Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft was just shipping PowerPoint after Windows, after Excel, after Word, and the feature of the bloat, and it was like, please, just stop. And then when they went to Office 365, they had telemetry for the first, I mean, can you imagine? The company, they were so late to telemetry because of the business model issues and all the other issues. But once you get there, it's like, okay, they're not using it. I'm sorry, they don't ever click there. Okay, the guys that first got there were the website guys, right? The people that were figuring out where were the clicks and taking people on the website. But telemetry, outreach, and active users gives you now the X-ray to see into the system. And now you can see what's going on. And this is your first chance to be diagnostic. To say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? How can we intervene? Clearly this person is stuck right here. I don't know if you guys know Sal Khan and the Khan Academy, but the way they teach math and the way they do that stuff, they have telemetry. They see where a kid gets stuck, and they intervene, and then they let him go self-paced until he or she gets stuck again, and then they do it again going forward. We can do that with customer success. So therefore, huge emphasis on putting telemetry into products. Still, in tech, it's pretty solid. But even the tech stuff, ton of on-prem, no telemetry there. And then if you're like, I mean, I did a bunch of work with the Johnson Controls people who have all these HVAC systems in the world. They want to be able to use telemetry so they can do predictive maintenance. Good luck. I mean, they're on how many buildings with how many third-party mom and pops maintaining them? This is a big step. It's a big step. But getting there, without this, you're blind. You're basically like wandering out onto a freeway without vision. It's a very scary thing to do. So you should, if your company doesn't have this, they should be afraid because they're going to get creamed. Okay. The next one up is if you're in a subscription business model, if you're in a SaaS model or a consumption model or usage model, any of those models, now customers can get off. Now they can't get off the boat easily. There's still a ton of switching costs. Right? I mean, let's not, but the lock-in is not what it was. And more importantly, what they can do is, well, we're not going to throw you out, but we're not going to give you any more money. And by the way, we're going to take the money that we would have given you, and we're going to start giving it to your competitors. And eventually, we will figure out a way to get you out of here. So all of a sudden, retention, and if you look at the SaaS business model, and you look at the lifetime value and customer acquisition costs dynamics, it takes several years to get a customer to break even in that model. If they churn out early, you lost money by selling a customer. The longer they stay, the better the economics gets. So net retention, the number one sort of investor metric for the SaaS business model is net retention. Like 115% would be like, yes, thank you very much. 100% is actually bad, okay? And obviously below 100%, it starts to get scary, okay? So it's realization, it's renewals, we're talking to the end user, but we're also talking to the economic buyer here too, right? I mean, like, are you getting are you achieving your stuff? Salesforce has a really cool management model called V2MOM, vision, values, measures, obstacles. No, vision, values, methods, obstacles, measures. The point about that is they use that to figure out, are the methods that we're pursuing achieving the vision and the values that we have? If you sit down with your customer and have that conversation with an executive and get them to articulate their vision and their values, they can buy a lot more from you and they can consume a lot more and you can retain that relationship more because you can tilt the professional services, those very expensive advisor people, towards saying, look, this is the vision, this is the values. Get in there and be creative, because it'll take creative innovation to do this. Get in there and be creative and innovative with that customer and help them take this to the next level. I think this is, by the way, 2 and 3 are kind of, to me, where I think many of us in this room might be. But I think there's more to think about as we go forward. So when you get to renewals, it's interesting. Most renewals are still largely in the sales side of the house. But at this point, the customer success manager, if they're doing the work the way you would hope, particularly in larger accounts where you have more dedicated people, they actually have a better relationship upon which to pursue a renewal than the salesperson does. At least they could have it. And so and particularly as you go down the pyramid and you want to create a renewals motion, the issue is we need to activate the thing. But culturally, customer success has never had a quota for very good reason. We want the customer to be successful. We're not trying to optimize our pocketbook. We're trying to optimize their pocketbook. So therefore, making it into a selling engine I think school's out. I think if it's done correctly and in the right spirit, I think it'll be very powerful, because I think the customer would like to renew with their general purpose physician. This is a little, this is the doctor. This is your basic doctor, not a specialist, but your basic doctor. It's also they're in a position to start seeing where are the use cases. You talk about those blocks, those solution blocks, app blocks in the marketplace for Tango here. When you build those around use cases, they're so portable across customers, across learnings. You can take them to other places. Ecosystems organize around enabling use cases, and you start creating more power in your ecosystem because you have these really prepackaged we call them whole products in Crossing the Chasm. They're the complete solution to that. It's very hard for the product people to see use cases because they're spending too much time in their building and not enough time in the customer's building. But the customer success manager, if given the right tools and the right training and the right orientation, can start to do this. And they can capture the internal referral. So the point about that fourth one is it's relationship capital that we are not currently using that we could potentially activate. It's a pretty visionary idea, but it's not crazy, okay, I don't think. And then we get to this notion of roadmap prioritization, which was also, if you saw in that customer OS, their product was one of those 6 circles. And here the issue is now usage narratives, meaning that's the vision and values as well as the methods, and also the sentiment analysis. Where are we, where are we generating excitement? Like the sentiment, obviously, around this latest release that it's in beta still, around I guess it's the CX canvas. Those are sentiment. Those things are signals that are incredibly important to get all the way back to the product side of the house, and then also to the marketing side of the house, because it will teach you. Because look, when you're talking about yourself, nobody cares. I mean, maybe your mom. Okay, but nobody else cares. But when you talk about their use cases and their challenges and the way in which technology can intersect those challenges, now you're positioning yourself on their side of the table, not your side of the table. And so, yes, there's a time for competing against competitive positioning, but customers, frankly, at some point, it's like, would you guys just take that someplace else? I want to talk about me. I don't want to talk about you, and I don't want to talk about your competitor. Let's talk about me. But the more we can do that, the more I think we can be powerful up and down the whole line. So that's a maturity model. I hope at some point you guys have a chance to give some feedback on this. It certainly, I'm sure it needs a bunch of work. But with that, I'm going to actually say thank you very much. I've overrun my time, and I'll stop.